So I've said this week that I think Ohio State and Tennessee are very similar football teams. How similar are they? We take a look at inside the numbers here on a Thursday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Cain. Appreciate you guys for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Can't thank you every day is enough for being a part of the show. And today's show is presented in part by our friends over at Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Again, that is on the Game Time app. Today, we're going to take a look at inside the numbers, Tennessee football and Ohio State. How similar and how different are these two teams, and how do these stats rank amongst the other 12 teams, or the other, 10 teams in the college football playoff? That's coming up here in segment number one. Grant Ramey is going to join me to talk number one Tennessee basketball in segment number two. They just took down Miami in Madison Square Garden earlier this week. What does Grant Ramey have to say about the top-ranked Volunteers? That's coming up in segment two. And then, does Tennessee have the most difficult path in the college football playoffs this year? As the number 9 seed, it shouldn't, but the way things are kind of transpiring with automatic bids and all that, it looks like, at least you can make the case, that Tennessee has the toughest path in the college football playoffs. That's coming up in segment number 3 we will discuss. Okay, so I've said this week, I think Tennessee and Ohio State are very similar. Of course, I think across the board, and again, this is a Vol podcast, but you guys know I'll shoot you straight here. I think across the board, talent-wise, I think Ohio State's a more talented team. I think player-wise and development-wise, over the course of 4 or 5 years in terms of building that program where it is, I think there's more talent across the board for Ohio State. That does not mean that I don't think Tennessee is more talented in certain spots, because I do. That does not mean that I don't think Tennessee can win this game, because I certainly do believe that Tennessee can win this game. But I do think these are very similar teams. Both teams love to run the football. Both teams are very good at defending the run. I think Ohio State has the advantage of wide receiver. I think Tennessee probably has the advantage at cornerback. Does that mean the entire secondary? We'll see. But I think these are two teams that are very good, very efficient in the red zone, both on defense. And I'm going to point out a couple of factors that I think we need to pay attention to in this football game when you're looking at Tennessee versus Ohio State. But let's go inside the numbers a little bit. I wrote a story over at volquest.com this week, and I kind of broke down all 12 college football playoff teams and what those numbers look like, and some of the bigger stats. And of course, stats don't tell the whole story. I recognize that. But I wanted to go and look at, scoring offense, scoring defense, total offense, total defense, passing O, rushing O, D, all that and more. And I wanted to kind of see where they were and then how that team ranks among the other 11 teams in the college football playoff. So I looked at Ohio State here, and Ohio State's a very, very sound football team. Okay, when comparing Ohio State and Tennessee, Ohio State's scoring offense is 35.5 points per game. And again, this is Big Ten play and out of conference. When I look at Tennessee here in a minute, this is going to be SEC play and out of conference. Recognize, at least in Tennessee's case, and certainly for Ohio State as well, there are some blowouts there in non-conference play. Tennessee put 69 on, UTEP, and had over 73 or whatever it was against UTEP, but had 71 points against UTC or Kent State. Whatever the case is, there's some blowouts there that might inflate the numbers a little bit. But nonetheless, Ohio State scores 35.5 points per game offensively. That's tied for 7th amongst playoff teams. Tennessee is scoring 37.2 points per game. That is 5th among playoff teams. So advantage Tennessee in that regard. Ohio State in total offense, 423 yards and a half per game. That ranks 9th among playoff teams. Tennessee is 462.9 yards per game of total offense. That ranks 2nd among playoff teams. Passing offense for Ohio State, 254.3 yards per game. That ranks 7th among playoff teams. They have the advantage there over Tennessee, where Tennessee and Nico Iamaleava, 230.9 yards through the air per game. That ranks 9th among college football playoff teams. Very similar here in terms of, Tennessee's got the advantage. I guess it's more so on defense. But running the football, Ohio State loves to run the football. 169.2 yards per game. That's a pretty good number, right? But we're talking about college football playoff teams. Running for essentially 170 yards per game will get you 10th best in all of the playoff teams, which is one of the more surprising stats in my opinion. And again, 170 yards on the ground, that's not All-American, right? But that is certainly not bad. But 170 yards on the ground rushing, it will get you 10th among playoff teams. That's Ohio State. Whereas Tennessee rushes for 232 yards per game. That is second only behind Boise State. Third down offense, 42% conversion rate. That's 10th among playoff teams for Ohio State. Tennessee is 48% conversion rate. That is fourth. Touchdowns in the red zone. This is where it's kind of different here, okay? Ohio State is very efficient in the red zone offensively. Ohio State scores touchdowns within the red zone 77.5% of the time, meaning they punch it in. They don't settle for field goals, okay? 77.5% of red zone chances for Ohio State ends in touchdowns. That is second best among playoff teams. Tennessee is one of the more inefficient teams in the red zone on offense. And we've talked about this all year, right? Tennessee on red zone trips, 61.6% of the time, it ends in touchdowns, and that is 11th best of 12 teams in the college football playoffs. So that is one area where, advantage Ohio State, and Tennessee's got to be efficient when he gets in the red zone. Let's flip it over to defense, all right? Ohio State and many metrics, lead the nation in defense. Here's one. Let me finish this. Turnover-wise, Ohio State has 13 turnovers offensively. That's eighth most in the or eighth best in college football playoff teams. Tennessee has 15 turnovers. That is ninth best, so pretty on par there. Let's go to defense. Scoring defense, Ohio State is really good. 10.9 points per game allowed. That's first among playoff teams. Tennessee, 13.9 points per game. That's fourth, but very, very comparable. Scoring or total defense, Ohio State, 241 yards allowed per game to opposing offenses. That's first among playoff teams. Tennessee, 278 yards allowed per game. That is fourth best among playoff teams. So comparable again, but Ohio State has the advantage of about 40 yards or so. Passing defense, Ohio State allows 144 yards through the air per game. That's second best among playoff teams. Tennessee allows 178 yards through the air. That is seventh best among playoff teams. So the advantage there by about 30 yards. Rushing defense, this is where they're very comparable again. Ohio State allows 96 yards on the ground per game. That is third best among playoff teams. Tennessee, 99 yards allowed on the ground per game. That is fourth best among college football playoff teams. So again, very comparable. Third down defense, Tennessee's got like one of the best in the country. Third down defense, Tennessee is holding opponents to a 29% conversion rate. That is the best mark among all college football playoff teams. Ohio State's decent, 33.7, but that's eighth best among college football playoff teams. Here's where Ohio State has an advantage. Where Tennessee had the advantage on third down, Ohio State, once again in the red zone, has the advantage in holding opponents to a low touchdown rate. Ohio State is holding opponents to a 34.4% rate of scoring touchdowns inside the red zone. That's really, really low. That's number one. So where Tennessee is inefficient in that regard, Ohio State is very efficient. So that is one key matchup in this game that I don't like for Tennessee is in the red zone offensively, because Ohio State's defense is very good at keeping teams out of the end zone when they're inside the 20-yard line. Best among all college football playoff teams, where Tennessee is not like that on offense. But defensively, we're talking defense here, Tennessee is very comparable in terms of defensive red zone efficiency, where Ohio State is ranked number one in that regard at holding opponents to a 33.7% touchdown clip. Tennessee, a 44.1% touchdown clip. That is second best among playoff teams. So again, these defenses are very comparable. Tennessee ranks seventh among college football playoff teams with 20 takeaways. Ohio State ranks tied for 10th with 17 takeaways defensively. So, again, these are very comparable football teams. I do think, again, when we're just looking at offensive stats, that the offensive stats are a little bit inflated, especially in the total offense and points per game, because Tennessee just wallops some out-of-conference opponents. But, again, that rushing offense is not inflated because Tennessee's run the football on everybody they played this year. I think Ohio State is comparable on offense with Tennessee, but I think these two defenses, it's a heavyweight battle. And there are some really interesting factors and matchups to watch. red zone efficiency, both offensively and defensively for both these two teams, third down, both offensively and defensively, running the football, both offensively and stopping the football on the ground defensively. I think Ohio State 10-2, Tennessee 10-2, very comparable. So all this to say, I know I threw a ton of numbers out at you. I've been saying all week long, I think these two teams are very similar. And I think these numbers that I just shared kind of back that up. Now, Ohio State has the edge in some categories. Tennessee has the edge in some categories. But I do think that they are very, very comparable, very, very comparable. Who's going to make plays when it matters the most? Who's going to rise up to the challenge and separate themselves? A lot, the betting markets will say the home team will. That's why Ohio State is favored. But you don't play the game on paper. And yes, Tennessee's got some road woes, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But Tennessee has an opportunity to go up to the shoe and knock off Ohio State, because I think these two teams are very comparable, and Tennessee can absolutely accomplish that task. More on that and how that's going to happen on tomorrow's show, and of course next week's show when we officially get into game week for the college football playoffs. All that and more is coming up later on, but we'll talk more Tennessee in the college football playoffs, specifically the path. And is it the most difficult, or does it lean more easy? Spoilers, it's definitely, if not the most difficult, it's one of the most difficult paths of all teams in the college football playoff. That's coming up here in a little bit, but next we'll talk with Grant Ramey on Tennessee #1 basketball. All that and more coming up as we continue on with the Thursday Locked On Vols. Hey, I want to tell you about my friends over at Game Time. Game Time is an app to where you can buy tickets to events in your area, whether that's sporting events, entertainment events, all that and more. You can buy tickets to those events in your area, in your hometown, in the cities near you by downloading the Game Time app, and you can put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and if you do that, you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. It's super, super simple. Plus, on the Game Time app, you can check out Game Time Picks, where it's a curation that makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater. It's not just sporting events, it's entertainment events, concerts, comedy shows, monster truck rallies, whatever is going on in your area. You can buy those tickets on the Game Time app, all in prices, where it's a feature that shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You can check out pictures of your seats so you know exactly what you're paying for, and the lowest price guarantee, where you're going to be credited 110% of the difference if you find a cheaper ticket in the same section somewhere else other than Game Time. Try Game Time today, gametime.co on your web browser, or download the Game Time app. That's what I advise. Create that account, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Hey, I want to welcome on the show Grant Ramey, my colleague over at VolQuest.com, freshly back from the city, New York City, at Madison Square Garden, where Tennessee took down Miami 75-62. First and foremost, second time this year you've been to New York City, Grant. Always a fun time traveling up there, right? How cold was it in the Big Apple?
It was like 50s and drizzling, kind of cold rain, and then I come out of the clouds in Knoxville, and there's a little bit of snow on the ground. So I thought I was going the other direction in terms of temperature, but turns out it was not.
Yeah, that is interesting. I remember whenever last January when Snowmageddon hit East Tennessee, me and the wife were actually in the Dominican Republic, so we saw the snow pictures, and it was like 90 degrees. But when I came back, I remember descending down into McGee-Tyson and seeing all the snow on the ground. It was pretty neat. Tennessee just goes out there and handles business, right? It just feels like this team just doesn't bat an eye, and this is a lot of new players compared to last year, and that's kind of what college basketball is and college athletics is, but a very veteran-led team that just don't bat down. The stage is never too bright. The lights aren't too bright. The national stage is not too bright. Tennessee certainly looks right now, though it's shorthanded, needs to get healthy. It looks like the best team in the country, and what we saw the other night against Miami and New York didn't take away from that.
No, it handles its business is a good way to put it, and they're playing with 8 scholarship players in the Jimmy V Classic the other night against Miami. You're the #1 team in the country, but they seem to just kind of know, everybody knows their roles, and they just kind of take care of business. And Miami, not a great basketball team. They've lost 7 in a row. Made some shots early and stuck around, but Tennessee kind of went on that one of those little Tennessee moments where they shut you out for 5-6 minutes and they build a lead. They didn't allow a point over the final 8 minutes of the first half. They went on a 14-0 run. That kind of thing changes the game. They built the lead to 18 in the second half. They had a little bit of a lull, a little bit of sloppiness there for a few minutes, and Miami got it back to 6. And then there was a possession there where Igor hits the 3. Jordan Gainey blocks a 3 in the corner. And then Chaz Lanier goes down the other end, scores just like that. It's a 12-point game. So they were impressive in how they handled their business to build the 18-point lead. They're also pretty impressive in how they kind of answered the bell right there and didn't let catastrophe happen over those final few minutes.
I mean, Tennessee basketball always starts with defense. You're not going to play defense. You're typically not going to play for Rick Barnes. We know that. Already some very impressive defensive showings in this game. But as you mentioned, like that defensive run they went on there to end the first half. You look at the final box score, 39% shooting in the game from Miami, 24 from long range. Tennessee's got some scorers, and that's been awesome to see, but just the defense, it's so suffocating, and it starts at the top with Sakai and what Jamal Meshack does and so on and so forth. I mean, how has this team been able to gel so cohesively early on defensively this season?
Probably because of those two guys you named right there, Zakai Ziegler and Jamal Meshack. I mean, Tennessee KenPom is, I think, number 2 in adjusted defensive efficiency right now. They've been top 5 each of the last 4 years, I believe. It's something like 5-3, 2-3, something like crazy numbers. Top 3 more than top 5. And it's just – and all the different pieces they've had, along the way, how these rosters change over year. It's crazy. But, I mean, it's just the standard. Zakai sets that standard. Jemai sets that standard. 2 of the best defensive guards in basketball. Jemai is one of the best versatile defenders in the country, maybe the best in terms of what he can do. He can guard the point guard. He can guard the center. He can do whatever you need him to do. And Zakai's just tenacious. As much as he plays, 35, 33, whatever minutes it is a night, for him to play as hard as he does on both ends, it's pretty incredible to see. And I think they just set the standard. And with Rick Barnes, if you want to play basketball for Rick Barnes, you better play defense. Like, he's not going to trade offense for defense and just be fine with that. You're going to play on both ends of the floor if you want playing time.
And again, I know there's other factors. There's a lot of injuries and everything. But, I mean, look at a guy like Jamal Meshack 3 years ago.
Right.
And a guy that has never been an offensive threat, never been an offensive weapon per se, but like just continues to work and work and work. He's a defensive stud and mastermind. And like 3 years later, you are playing 37 minutes at Madison Square Garden for the top-ranked team in the country. I think that's just a perfect example of kind of what this program is. Guys like him, and we've seen other examples of that, throughout this program.
They're gonna develop talent, and they're gonna play the game the right way, and that's what we've seen. I mean, Jemai Meshack's a perfect example of that. He's gonna play defense first, and he's gonna score. He can score it out in transition. He'll hit a shot every now and then when you need it. He'll come up in a big moment, but you just know that defense is gonna be there. And when you can start on that end of the floor, good things are gonna happen.
Tennessee is shorthanded. I mean, Tennessee's playing 8 scholarship players right now, as you mentioned. I remember in 2015, Duke won a national championship playing with 8 scholarship players and 4 freshmen. It's kind of a different ballpark in terms of the caliber of recruits at that point in time. But hopefully this won't be the case for too awful long. Darlington Stone-Dubar was out in concussion protocol. Cam Carr is going to be missing the next few weeks. Obviously, he's been out for a little bit. JP Estrella is out for the year. That's unfortunate. Health-wise, kind of when should we expect to see Tennessee getting healthier?
I mean, Darlington Stone-Dubar is going to be a game-by-game kind of practice-by-practice, see what happens, because I don't know what's going on there outside of he didn't practice on Monday, and they said it was concussion protocol on Tuesday, and he didn't play. So that's something just to kind of watch and see what happens, how that develops, and I assume he'll be back sooner rather than later. Cam Carr with the thumb. He had some kind of surgery. I guess it was a ligament situation with his thumb. That was, I guess, the 3rd week in November, and it was a 4 to 6 week timetable. So I think it's somewhere around the start of SEC play if everything's on time and he can start working his way back in. Like, he goes through warm-ups and he does stuff in practice in terms of working on the defensive end, like individual stuff. I think he's going to be a better defender because of this time with his hand in a cast. But at the same time, it's short and you're kind of thin a little bit, and a lot of people are playing a lot of minutes. But you go back to that 2018-19 team, they really had maybe 7-8 guys in that rotation, and that was it. Like, they had more bodies on the bench, but it wasn't really competitive depth because those guys weren't getting in games. Those were freshmen, whoever, but they were scholarship players. This team might be the same way, where Rick doesn't often have a 9-10 man rotation. He sticks with the 7-8 guys he trusts, and he leans on them heavy, and we'll see how this one develops. But what you like about this group, they're kind of shorthanded numbers-wise, but, man, it seems like everybody knows what they need to do, and they go out there and execute it.
Yeah, talking about Cam Carr, Rob Lewis on the BallQuest podcast on Thursday, referred to me as my elite football career, and he's right. It was elite. I tore some ligaments in my right thumb, and it hurt, like little things like writing or turning the keys. When you get in the car, Like it's so painful. So like it's interesting. Like obviously can't use it to shoot the basketball right now, but how you can get better on the defensive end. I'm intrigued to see how he kind of comes in on the other end. Obviously got another road tilt fighting a Illini coming up this weekend. What's the scout there? And then lastly, Chaz Lanier. He again 22 points the other night. Just makes it look so effortless. He's playing so efficient on the offensive end right now. Nobody's going to be Dalton Connect, but he's been everything you wanted him to be so far when you got him out of the portal, right?
I mean, you got to think about Madison Square Garden. The last 2 times Tennessee went there was for the Sweet 16 against Florida Atlantic. They went 6 for 23 from the 3-point line.
That was a basketball there, right?
And then that was the Wilson basketball. That's NCAA tournament basketball. 3 years ago was the Jimmy V Classic with that same Spalding basketball they used Tuesday night. Tennessee went 6 for 39 in 45 minutes of an overtime loss. They scored 52 points against Texas Tech. And then to start the game Tuesday night, 14 seconds in, Chaz just pulls up and drains a 3 and everything's fine. Tennessee started, I think, 6 for 11 from 3 in the first 11 minutes of that game Tuesday night, the same number it took them 45 minutes to make 3 years ago. And he just I was telling Hubs the other night after the game, I think he could show up anywhere on any goal with any basketball, playing with any group of people and just score the basketball. It doesn't matter where he is, if it's a playground somewhere, if it's on the side of a barn, this kid could just show up and hit shots. I think that's what it is. I mean, and the funny thing is, Rick says after the game, you have to give him an A+ for what he's done so far, but he's really not doing what we want him to do yet. Like, he's not moving without the basketball enough and all this stuff. He's not screening hard enough. He's not working hard enough to get open. So if he's doing that, that's basically what I was thinking when Rick was saying it. Like, if he's just standing around and scoring 22 points, what's he going to do if he gets to doing more and all that stuff that Rick wants him to do? So it still feels like the upside is kind of unlimited, and we'll see where it goes. But it's feels like transfer portal gold. But Saturday at Illinois, man, toughest test of the season. Anytime you go on the road, anytime it's going to be a capacity crowd, you're the number 1 team in the country. That's a huge label. That's a huge target put on your back. You're going to have to deal with it. Zakai was talking about that Tuesday night in New York, saying they're not going to duck anybody. They want all the smoke and all that stuff. Well, you're going to get a pretty good test on the road at Illinois. A really tough basketball program under Brad Underwood, a little bit more developed than maybe what Louisville was the second week of the season when Tennessee went, or the second game of the season when Tennessee went there and handled that road environment. But Tennessee's the number 1 team in the country because people have lost in front of them. They've just kept winning. They haven't been tested. They've won every game by 13. This is going to be a really big test to pass, and we'll see what happens.
Rick Barnes, very Rodney Garner-like in terms of your team's playing really, or your unit's playing really, really well, but it's like, says who? I didn't say that.
I mean, you speaking of Rodney, you should watch Rick Barnes in practice go after Chaz. I mean, goes after him. He attacks him the same way he attacks Dalton Connect, or he attacked Dalton Connect in practice. I mean, that's the biggest compliment you can get from somebody like Rick Barnes. If he's going at you that hard in practice, it's because he believes you can be that good of a basketball player. And we're just starting to see kind of scratching the surface of what this kid could be here.
And let's not forget, it takes some talent to belittle a college athlete and bring them down to nothing without using a curse word.
And he does it. He does it very well.
Takes some serious talent. All right, Grant, appreciate it as always, man. I know crossover season's tough, but you're doing a great job. Thanks for joining us.
All right, man. See you.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action this weekend with FanDuel. It is America's #1 sportsbook because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join and get started today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel.com and on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. You can never waste a hunch and make every single moment more with FanDuel. It is America's #1 sportsbook. It's where you can make every single moment more, and it's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. That is FanDuel Sportsbook. Hey guys, welcome back into your Thursday show. Great stuff as always from my buddy, my colleague over at VolQuest.com. That is Grant Ramey, talking about the #1 ranked Tennessee Volunteers. Just coming back from New York, Madison Square Garden, the Mecca. Tennessee basketball 9-0 and looking pretty daggone good doing it, right? I do want to shift some gears back to the college football playoffs because obviously, hey, your team is in the college football playoffs, right? This is the expectation we talked about all offseason, all summer, and here you are. So we're certainly going to milk that cow as much as we can and get every little ounce of football we can this season. And hopefully Tennessee will win next week, and we could be talking about a potential Rose Bowl matchup. And, of course, that would be against Oregon. But certainly you've got to handle the Buckeyes first, and that is going to be no easy task. Ohio State is a good football team. You're playing at the Shoe, which is going to be a hostile road environment. I bet Tennessee will have somewhere around maybe 8, 9, maybe 10,000 fans. There's not going to be a lot of orange in that place because just the way the logistics are set up and how the fans are only allotted 3,500. So Tennessee fans are going to be trying to buy on the secondary market. It's going to be tough. But, hey, that's how it would be here if the game was at Knoxville, at Neyland Stadium. And that's why it's a bigger conversation, and we can talk about that later on. Should Tennessee be hosting this game? But nonetheless, that's not the way the cookie crumbled this time. So Tennessee is on the road, and Tennessee will have to win an opening round matchup at Ohio State. Say Tennessee wins that game. I already mentioned taking on Oregon in the Rose Bowl out in the West Coast. That path is fun to be on, but that path is not necessarily the easiest. Tennessee, I mean, if I'm Oregon, okay, and I said this before, I'm about to reference a CBS Sports article that I'm going to bring on the show here, but I said on Selection Sunday, man, like, and really, leading into Selection Sunday, Oregon got screwed, in my opinion. Oregon, right, you're the number 1 ranked team in the country. You earn that. You earn that ranking. Your prize is to await the winner of 9-8 Tennessee, Ohio State, who are two very good football teams who could certainly win the whole daggum thing, in my opinion, right? So as the number 1 ranked seed in the field, Oregon, you get to await the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee, whereas, I don't know, let's look at Georgia, right? I'm not saying Notre Dame is bad. I'm not saying Indiana is bad, but you'd much rather play the winner of Indiana or Notre Dame if you're the 2 seed Georgia, right? Look at Boise State. Look at Penn State. Penn State, and sure, we can have the conversation on, if blind resumes, Tennessee, Penn State, you'd probably favor the resume of Tennessee over Penn State. But Penn State is the 6th seed, right? SMU deserves to be in the field. Okay, I'm not saying they don't deserve to be in the field. But Boise State, okay, that's who you're going to play. And Boise State deserves to be in the field. They run the football very well. They played Oregon, really, really well earlier this year. That's their only loss. But if I'm Penn State, I'm sitting here saying, okay, beat SMU, okay? And then in the Fiesta Bowl, I just got to take down Boise, and I'm in the semifinals. Penn State's got a pretty sweet ride, in my opinion. And then, of course, look at the potential semifinal matchup if Tennessee were to beat Ohio State, were to beat Oregon in the Rose Bowl. Tennessee would play either Clemson, Texas, or Arizona State. None of those teams are bad. I'm not trying to say they're bad, but Clemson, Texas is probably going to be the better football game, and that's in the opening round. Arizona State, because it gets that automatic bye the way everything's shaped out. It was the 4th highest ranked conference champion. It awaits Texas or Clemson, and I think the winner of Texas and Clemson is certainly going to go on to the semifinal game because I think both Clemson and Texas are much better than Arizona State. So if I'm Texas or Clemson, if I'm a member of that fan base, I'm saying win this football game, and then you're on the fast track because I think both those teams are super more talented. Is that correct phrasing? Super more talented than Arizona State, who would be awaiting the winner of that game in the Peach Bowl, in the quarterfinals. Excuse me. So to go on to the semifinals, CBS Sports put out an article kind of ranking each team's path in the college football playoff. According to CBS Sports, Penn State, which I referenced a moment ago, has the easiest path in the college football playoffs. So Penn State, of course, have to take down 11-seeded SMU and then take down Boise State in the quarterfinals to reach the semifinals. That is Penn State's path. So they have the easiest schedule. Boise State, conversely, has the 11th or the next easiest schedule, according to the CBS article, which it would await the winner of SMU or Penn State and then have to beat them to go on to the semifinals. Texas has the 3rd easiest schedule. And I referenced that a moment ago. You've got one game, right? That one game's going to be tough. You got to beat Clemson, but then you can beat Arizona State, and then boom, you're on to the semifinals. Georgia has the 4th easiest schedule, awaiting the winner of Notre Dame and Indiana in the Sugar Bowl for a spot in the semifinals. Again, Georgia's in a really good position. I understand they got some injury concerns at quarterback, and that's not a non-story. I get it, but Georgia is kind of sitting pretty. Arizona State has the 5th easiest schedule. essentially waiting the winner of Clemson or Texas, as I mentioned earlier. Clemson then conversely has the 6th easiest schedule. SMU has the 7th easiest schedule. Notre Dame has the 8th easiest path. Ohio State has the 9th easiest path. Oregon has the 10th easiest path. Again, Oregon, as the number 1 ranked team in the field, essentially has the 3rd hardest path to a national championship. It shouldn't be that way. Indiana has the 2nd hardest path to a national championship game. And then Tennessee, CBS Sports ranks Tennessee as the number 1 hardest path to a college football playoff national championship. This is what they have to say about Tennessee's in terms of its path. Tennessee plays its first college football game in program history at Ohio State, which is an extremely difficult task in a vacuum. Then you consider how bad the Vols have played in truly hostile environments under Coach Heupel. During 2024 season, they lost on the road at Arkansas, on a team that finished 3-5 in SEC play, and then by 14 at Georgia. Tennessee also went 1-3 on the road in 2023, including losses to unranked Florida and a 29-point defeat at Missouri. If Tennessee gets past Ohio State, it has to travel 3 time zones away to play top-seeded Oregon in the Rose Bowl. Not to mention the fact that Texas, Clemson, and Arizona State, 2 conference championship winners and a preseason national title favorites, that being Texas, loom as potential semifinal matchups. So CBS Sports believes that Tennessee has the hardest path to a college football playoff national championship, and I would tend to agree. But it is what it is, man. I mean, if Tennessee is able to run this whole thing, nobody can dispute the Volunteers being the best team in the country because it had the hardest path. You got to focus on Ohio State first, make Ohio State a priority. You know Josh Heupel's doing that. Josh Heupel would never be caught having comments like Ryan Day, and I think Ryan Day kind of seen some things on Twitter, and I watched that snippet of the press conference on Sunday. Somebody was asking him about the Oregon matchup and so on and so forth. And at the very beginning, he said, "Hey, whoa, we gotta focus on this first game here. We gotta focus on this first game." But then he goes on to say, that matchup and that matchup and that matchup, first game, it made it look like he was looking ahead at Tennessee, but that's why context is always key. You've got to focus on the game at hand. But I guess the point I'm trying to say is Josh Heupel, anytime he talks in front of a microphone, it's all about Ohio State, because you got to get that one ready to roll here. All right, so fun show today. A lot of information. Hopefully you learned some things. Hopefully it was entertaining as well, but I try to entertain. I try to inform because I want to be the smartest Tennessee fan and the smartest Tennessee media member that I can be. And I'm sure you want to be a smarter Tennessee fan as well, so you can win those arguments at the bar, in the family group chat, at work with your colleagues, all that and more. So a lot of things thrown at you here today, but hopefully it was entertaining. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Big thanks to Grant Ramey for stopping by the show and talking about the top-ranked Tennessee basketball team. We'll come back and we'll get you set for the weekend. Tennessee's not playing this football this weekend, but next weekend it is on in the college football playoff. That and a whole lot more. This is Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys.